Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
Hi there, I am Sara J Maas, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to BookTok for BookTok, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sara J Maas's first installment in the Crescent City series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This is part 2 of this week's episode.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of the many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series and extended universe spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised. I'm going to come back to kind of what you were saying about the whole calling Ruhn Prince. I'm going to kind of come back to Bryce being compared to the Autumn King. And this is where there's some similarities to all around. She tells Hunt, quote, yeah, you're the Umbra Mortis. His teeth flashed. I don't care what you call me, Quinlan. So it's similar to Bryce using titles.
Yeah.
Right? She calls Ruhn Prince Ruhn.
Right.
She calls him the Umbra Mortis. She doesn't even really call him the Umbra Mortis. She says, yeah, you were the Umbra Mortis. Like, This is your title. And both times, it's not an insult. But it is. And she's like, and the way that he responds of like, call me what you want. It's like, yeah, but she didn't call you anything. And you're getting sensitive about this. And it also shows a lot of what's happening where the title affects him. He doesn't like being the Umbra Mortis.
So I view Bryce's use of titles as a tool to mock people. Right? She calls Ruhn Prince, Princeling.
Yeah.
She calls him the Chosen One.
Yep.
She calls Hunt Umbra Mortis. And it's because these titles should have power over her, but the way she says it does the exact opposite.
And she doesn't even she doesn't even call him the Umbra Mortis. That's like how much power she has.
Yeah,
you're the Umbra Mortis. Like, she's not even like, you're this, you are this. She's not even saying like, yes, Umbra Mortis, like it's, God, she's in control. I love it.
Always.
I love it. And Bryce is the queen of weapons, right? She weaponizes her words. She weaponizes weapons. And then she feminizes weapons. And Bryce knows that she's hot. And what's one of her biggest weapons? It's her body. And rather than viewing her body as an object to be desired, to be coveted, so therefore like to be hidden, her body is a weapon to be used. Quote, so he'd been forced to glower through the glass, returning to the roof only after she emerged from her bedroom in nothing but a black sports bra and thong. Her smirk at his backtracking wings had been nothing short of feline. There's no shame.
It's hot.
There's no like, oh, do I look good in this? It's just like, I'm going to make you uncomfortable so that you have to leave. And just the power that she must have walked in where Hunt didn't even like kind of like check her out and go,
right.
Like that's how overtly feminine and like powerful she is, where it made him back away. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to walk around in a black bra and a black sports bra.
In a black bra and a black sports bra?
The
Black thong and a black sports bra?
Sorry, yeah. So that's how I got ready in the morning. Was in a black and a black thong and a sports bra.
Nice.
That was me. I was like, I too shall be powerful.
But for me, it's the eye contact. It's not just about wearing it. It's about being like, I am watching you watch me. Mm-hmm. Now what are you going to do?
I think you broke my brain. So how unbelievably powerful is that? Where someone comes out naked or whatever and is making like the most like, I'm going to stare at you so that if you're looking at them, they know you're looking at them.
Mm-hmm. They know where you're looking because there's no shame, right? Typically, if someone comes out of the shower or is in their underwear, you're trying to hide your body. You're trying to not make eye contact because by not making eye contact, no one can acknowledge you and therefore nobody can see you, right?
Yeah.
I envision her making eye contact before she struts out, before Hunt knows what's going on.
Yeah, like that's the first thing he sees are her eyes, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. And then he's put off and is like, oh, run away.
Yeah.
That's why porn is so popular, is because there's never any eye contact. There's no shame in observing in my brain.
I was like, it's popular for a lot of reasons.
But
that's one of the pros.
Voyeurism
Yep.
is extremely attractive to a lot of people. And the second you're acknowledged and that fourth wall is broken, that becomes uncomfortable. And that's why that's why the fourth wall breaking is a popular device in movies.
Yep.
Because it makes you uncomfortable as a viewer.
I'm now imagining a porn where like they're doing some sex acts and then some of them turns to the camera. Well, that was awkward. Someone put me into directing porn. Did I tell you about the time I almost went on a date with a porn star?
No.
Yeah, we did not go on the date, but there's a parallel universe where Jack learned a lot. So now we're going to enter the portion of discussion that's just basically gasoline to my fire. But before we get into that being the whole nails thing situation, I want to go into what Isaiah says. Quote, he's talking to Hunt in this quote. You faced down enemy armies, survived Sanriel's arena, gone toe-to-toe with archangels. Surely a party girl isn't as difficult as all that. Okay, so while we've seen Ruhn and Hunt both struggle with their titles, Bryce uses her title and its illusion. Mm-hmm. She uses men's own lack of vision or understanding against them. Are you smiling? Because
I'm smiling because I just love the fact that you're like, she uses men's lack of vision. Like, you're just so like adamant that these men are boys.
So the reason why is this, I remember I got into a pretty intense, like not argument, but discussion with my aunt about this, where we're going back to I'm 25 years old. I'm in my first corporate job and I'm young. I'm still young, but like, I'm 25, I'm pretty, I'm blonde, I'm, big boobs in the office. And I had men second guess me left and right all the time, in the office, outside of work, and everywhere. And because I, blonde, big boobs, all of that stuff, I just was like, I'm going to then use it against you. So I then use that tactic corporately. Mm-hmm. And it happens less now, but I used it a lot of like, well, if you're going to assume I'm dumb and you're going to assume this, I will use that against you and use it to my advantage and come out on top. It wasn't manipulative, maybe, but you know what? Like this, if you're dumb enough to assume this about me, then I don't feel bad about this.
Right.
And my aunt was the one who was like, pretty like, no, I don't like, that's not good. That's bad. And it was just like, and I'm a big believer of like, if you're going to judge me based on looks, I will 100% use this to what I advantage. So so to me, it's like men's lack of vision. It's like,
you feel very strongly.
I do feel very strongly because it's like, I'm a 100% do that.
Yeah.
Less so now. I'm realizing because I'm inside all the time.
And you're on Zoom and you're in a little box.
Yeah, it happens a lot less. Luckily. Work from home, folks. Now let's get into the nails, which is another thing that I'm very passionate about.
Very passionate about.
I get my nails done a lot and I love my nails.
And they're long and red right now.
They are long and red. I'm about to get them done. And I was going to do them long and red. And then I read that she got them like ombre.
So now are you doing ombre?
No, I'm going to get them long and red again. But I really want ombre. Hunt, essentially, while watching her get her nails done, he's belittling her in the way that he describes it. And it's not just the concept of like, we're supposed to be investigating and she's getting her nails done, which is a valid critique of like, shouldn't we be busy? But it's not about that. He's even insulting the process. So I'm going to read a couple quotes. Was putting yet another coat of polish on her nails. How many did she need? Another quote. A full hour of drills, files, scissors being applied to her nails in a way that would make even the hind herself cringe. Pure torture. And I've already likened Bryce's nails to Talon. I mean, not I. Bryce has likened her nails to Talon. They're her weapons. Don't you sharpen weapons?
Right.
Don't you sharpen your swords?
Right. Don't you clean your gun?
Right? Like, these are things that you do to have your weapons in play. But he doesn't view them as weapons. He views it as very trivial. He views it as very female. And I want to recognize, I understand his frustration. He's sitting here being like, let's go. I want to get this done. Let's have this conversation and move on. But it's the intent of the insult that makes it sexist. It's the female, the calling her female, calling the other one nail technician a female, and just like, oh my God, like leave them alone. Yeah. Let them have their pretty nails. And also, it takes a long time to get your nails done. Right?
It does.
And then he also like belittles the camaraderie between women. Quote, and then Bryce, hugged the female, fucking hugged her like she was some sort of God's damned war hero for the job she'd done. All right, look, I'm sorry that you're not part of the super special club that is women, but women are a special club. Yeah. Let us have our sisterhood. I'm sorry that the patriarchy won't let you have that, Hunt. But go hug Isaiah. Go find a man and hug him.
He probably needs it.
Yeah, he probably does, if he's not betraying you. I don't know yet still, but...
I have to say, so like Jac said, we recognize Hunt is frustrated. We recognize he's acting like the alpha hole he tends to be because Bryce has refused to communicate with him. But on some level, it is a situation of his own creation because of the way he chooses to treat Bryce. Yeah. And so Bryce is just giving him kind of a taste of his own medicine in her way, right? Of like, well, if you're going to treat me this way, like an alpha hole, let me treat you like a bitch. Like, that's just how it's going to be until we can level set, even the playing field, whatever.
Absolutely. Like, there was never a moment of him wanting to be a team with this.
That's right.
He's the one who came in hot.
And that's why they are going to have these awful power dynamics and this tug of war until they can learn to be a team. Yeah. We've already talked about it a little bit, but Hunt isn't capable of being on Bryce's team right now because he's so attracted to her and he just can't handle it. And I was thinking about this while you were talking. The Hunt of right now compared to the Hunt at the end of the novel are very, very different. And I think this is emblematic of his traditionalist background, right? He's 200 years older than Bryce. He's been tortured and enslaved and working for Sandriel, who doesn't even allow technology in her area. Yeah. So, and he's only been in Lunathian for 4 years, 5 years.
Oh, wait. That didn't even dawn me. He hasn't even been around technology.
He hasn't been around technology for more than 5 years.
Wow.
So he is...
Assuming that the sister twin that he was with didn't use technology either.
And it says that she doesn't.
Okay.
That's why he...
So both sisters didn't use it.
I think so. Well, it was 200 years ago. So I don't think they had phones back then because Redner Industries created the phones within the last 60 years or something.
Okay, yeah, no, fair. No, good point. Like he's...
So he is what Edward Cullen should have been, an old school guy. Yeah. Right? So his thought processes, how he treats Bryce right now are pretty symptomatic of who he was 200 years ago. And I think that we see as he transitions, as he accepts modernity, he's going to learn how to compliment Bryce and how to be around Bryce in a way that is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
He just hasn't been exposed to that yet. So Hunt is being an alpha hole, but he's never known better. Also.
Yeah.
So I have to give him the chance to learn.
No, it's fair. All of this stuff is stuff that like is not unforgivable.
Yes, correct. And it also helps when I read this quote. Quote, someone with Quinlan's looks would become accustomed to the doors that face and body of hers opened without so much as a squeak of protest. Being half human had some disadvantages, yes. A lot of them, if he was being honest about the state of the world. But she'd done well. Really fucking well, if that apartment was any indication. First of all, he's misattributing her wealth.
And he's also so jealous.
He's so jealous because he's had nothing for so long.
Yeah.
That's why he has a baseball cap, because it was the first thing he could buy.
I forgot about that fact.
So, like,
oh,
he's jealous of Bryce because he assumes she's had more opportunities than him.
Mm-hmm.
He assumes she has more money than him. And she's attractive, and he's attracted to her, goddammit.
Yeah.
Like, he's just got a lot of pent-up emotions right now that he doesn't know what to do with, and he's not very good at working through them.
For so many pent-up emotions, and the fact that we get 0 sex scenes is like one of the hardest things about
It really
book.
is. It really is.
We get a little bit of Lahaba at the end of this section, and she's just so cute. And I don't look forward to the scenes that require more of her, because it made me sad just writing this. But we find out more about sprites and where they ended up after the war. And we find out that Lahaba, as well as all sprites, are immediately marked as slaves because their ancestors were part of the uprising. And this reminded me of 2 things. Well, it reminded me of one thing, and then our friend, Cambria, told me something else. I was like, oh, that's a good point. So I come from a Catholic background, and to me, I was like, that sounds like original sin. The concept that Catholics believe that everyone's born with original sin and you need to be baptized in order to have it go away. And just the fact that like you're born with sin already in you is like...
At least with my upbringing, they were very flawed. But at least on one hand, they didn't make that assumption, which brings me comfort.
Yeah.
I was not brought up with that assumption.
Yeah. I mean, I was, and I was like, talking about my early questioning. I was like, wait. Look at that baby. Look at that baby.
How can you tell me that baby is evil?
I mean, some of them, yes, but that one, yeah. No, it was one of my early issues. But then we have a friend who also reads a lot of SJM and reminded me that like SJM is Jewish, and there is a lot of history of Jews being born into slavery. So there's just a lot of like religious kind of undertones of being born condemned. Yep.
Such a good point. We now move on to chapter 16, where we find Ruhn back in his own home, coping from his encounter with his father, with the aid of mirth root, which I'm assuming is just weed.
Yeah. It sounds like more powerful weed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it makes people mirthful.
When I was typing that and I was like, mirth root, I was like, fucking hell, that's just so smart.
It's so smart.
Yeah.
I feel like Ruhn's use of the mirth root is both a coping mechanism as well as another form of rebellion. And I think that's just how Ruhn has just operated his entire life. How can I cope and also rebel? Let me do the 2 simultaneously, save some effort.
Yeah.
Quote, if the Autumn King knew the shit they did in this house, there was no way he or any other city head would allow them to lead the Fae Ox division. No way Micah would ever tap him to take his father's place on that council. But getting wasted was for off nights only. Never when on duty or on call. So even though Ruhn is rebelling, it's only when it's an off night. If he has to work, he's going to be a good boy and he's going to work because he is conditioned.
Right. But at the same time, he doesn't want to like thrive too much and be too successful. So therefore, he's going to still be some kind of self-destructive.
Yeah. Despite the urge to rebel or the illusion of rebellion, he always is going to fall in line. And yeah, he's not successful, but he is straddling a fence of sorts. He's not falling on the side of his father and being completely obedient, but he's not falling on the side of Bryce, where he's completely not that Bryce is rebellious, but completely not associated with the father.
Yeah.
Not falling in line. And Ruhn doesn't know which side he wants to be on. We're going to see him make a choice eventually, but I think his inability to make that choice, conditioned, like we talked about, but also I don't know that I can be convinced that if he didn't want to rule, he wouldn't just completely stop doing what he's doing. Mm-hmm. There's no reason for him to be the leader of the Faeox if he doesn't have a hope that maybe one day he would be powerful enough to rule them. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's just my thought process.
Yeah, like there's still a part of him that's like hopeful in a way.
If not hopeful, like this is my destiny.
Yeah.
Like I need to do this.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like, think about the fact that he's partying, and just a couple chapters before, he was giving Bryce shit about partying, mm-hmm. and he's the one who can't, like, he's so stoned that he can't do anything. But, you know, I think what the most important thing that I want to point out is that he's on his bed with his boots on.
Why? That's unacceptable.
I can't defend you here. I can defend you in so many other ways, but, like, and they're... with your boots on. So let's circle back to the idea of him not caring, and for things that are given, or that concept I was saying, right? Like things that are given to him and he doesn't care about them. Like, because he is spoiled, like, mm-hmm. in many ways, where, you know, he is trying to rebel, but by this type of rebelling, it's making him more immature. Like, mm-hmm. you can rebel and be mature, and he doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And the house that they lived in is so trash because they've been partying, right? A bunch. And he says, quote, that they only moved because their first one had literally started to fall apart. This house might not last another 2 years, if he was being honest. He doesn't value the space.
Right.
Him and his friends, like, none of them. And I have lived in shitty places and cared for it.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, like, little dingy rooms, and being like, but this is my little dingy room, and I'm going to do everything I can to take care of my little dingy room. And there's no sense of pride.
Yeah, that's fair. So therefore, Ruhn has body odor.
No, in my mind, his room smells nice because of how much he's of the Axe body spray. You know, he probably uses Axe. There's just so many boys in this.
There are.
That's my problem, is that this is just filled with boys.
I think this is SJM making up for the fact that there were so many men.
Yeah.
In ACOTAR.
Yeah. Which is hilarious because Bryce is the most grown up out of all of her characters.
Yeah, I agree.
Female leads.
I agree.
Where it's like, and now this is the one that poor Bryce is out here dealing with boys.
Yeah.
Farah was out there, a child, dealing with men.
Speaking of Bryce, I can't help but point out how much Bryce is on Ruhn's mind, even before she shows up. Regardless of the state of their relationship, Ruhn really, really, really cares about Bryce. Though they fought, you know, he'd spent hours cleaning the place. Spent hours mm-hmm. cleaning his room. Like, she was 16. He used to go visit her at her parents' place. Like, ugh. My poor heart.
It is really sad.
It is really, really sad because I think he was 60 when he met her. And he just wants to have a relationship.
No.
He's older. I mean, I think he's actually younger than 80.
Okay.
And he was in his 60s when he met Bryce at like 13.
Yeah.
He just really wants a connection because he's never really had a connection with his father. He obviously doesn't have one with his mother.
Poor Bryce is dealing with two men who don't know how to deal with connections that they both desperately seek with her.
Yep.
Different reasons.
Yep.
But two emotionally immature guys who are like, I don't know how to handle these feelings, but I want to be close to you, you bitch.
It's so true. And when Bryce is over, he even notices how much she's drawn to the music in the house. Not unlike him when he was drowning in the music he was listening to while high. he notices the things that make them connected. Like, oh, she's like me. We both love music. Oh, she's like me. Oh, she's like me. To me, it's tragic that he's so immature, he can't find a way to communicate that desire to be connected to her.
Yeah.
When Bryce comes over, Ruhn thinks, quote, he remembered her showing him her dance routines as a young teenager. She'd always looked so unbelievably happy. He'd never had the chance to ask why she stopped. So this is tragic for multiple reasons in my mind. Bryce and Ruhn's relationship is not good enough that right now that he's unwilling to ask a simple question. That would probably reveal a lot about her mental state, which he wants to know because he cares about her, but Bryce is unwilling to share. It also shows Ruhn's inability for simple deduction. Like, she doesn't dance maybe because Danika died.
I know, right? Well, I'm also wondering, didn't she stop trying to dance professionally way before Danika died because of her body?
Yes.
So we have two instances. I'm just pointing out his two failures. We have two moments that he could have said something to her.
Yeah.
You know, like, he could, like, hey, why did she stop trying to dance professionally? And then why did she stop dancing entirely?
Yeah.
So, double whammy.
And I don't think that makes him a bad brother because obviously he wants to, but he doesn't know how to. And he's not willing to try and fail.
Yeah.
So he'd rather not try at all.
Yep.
AKA immature.
Yeah.
And that's the fun thing about this multiple POV book is that we as readers know, well, Bryce stopped dancing because Danika died.
Yeah.
And she doesn't feel like she can have joy. But Ruhn doesn't know that. Just like Ruhn notices she doesn't drink her whiskey. And we know it's because she doesn't drink at all anymore. But he's just like, oh yeah, she didn't touch her whiskey.
It's like, that's so weird that she's not drinking and she's like not dancing.
But he doesn't even think it's weird. He just notices.
No, right? It's like, that's the other part. God, I need to stop saying it. Boys? but it's just so like, huh, she's not drinking. And she doesn't dance anymore.
Huh.
Oh, all right. Let me move on with my life.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to go sleep in bed with my boots on.
I guarantee if you were to walk into that house and ask them for like a water or toilet paper or something, none of them would be able to find that item in their own home.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right.
Unless it's the remote to the TV.
Even then, that is questionable. Nine times out of 10, it'll be under the couch.
Yep. So we're in Ruhn's POV, and I want to make that very clear because of this next quote. Tristan and Declan had been Ruhn's best friends for as long as he could remember, and always had his back, no questions asked. They were highly trained and efficient warriors, was besides the point.
Another time that it reminds me of Tamlin.
Can you call yourself a warrior? And I'm going to bring in Cassian. And I'm only bringing him in because, like, this is the only other, like, SJM character in all of her other books that, to me, is a warrior. He is literally the general of warriors. He trains them. Would Cassian call them warriors? Because I guarantee the answer would probably be...
He'd probably call them pups.
I mean, it's such a... Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that, like, the Illyrians or other warriors in general, like, don't party.
Right.
But this whole... we only party on our off nights. I feel like, you know, you're not going to see Illyrians partying like this every off night. You know?
Right.
And it's this like lack of, you know, can you be a warrior without that lack of responsibility?
And discipline.
And also the fact that that little tiny fact that he's never been to war. The Tamlin of it all, where it's like, you're calling yourself a warrior, but
you have no war.
Look up at the definition, it says experienced.
You're not experienced, sir.
None. Like, you went to a cave one time and it was scary.
You had to fight your cousin.
Boo-hoo. I know. I'm so sorry that was kind of hard. Circle back when you've like done some shit. Like, it's so self-given, and it's just so like how he views himself. Are they trained? Yes. Are they deadly? Sure.
I would call it indulgent.
Yeah. It's
indulgent to call yourself warriors.
Yeah.
Hunt is a warrior.
He been to war.
Yeah.
He been to war. He be out there warring. He's literally enslaved because of the war he did. with this reality and this understanding, no wonder Hunt hates him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little princeling bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, oh, you want to go fight?
Bring your special sparkly sword.
With your sparkly finger.
Poor Ruhn. I do love Ruhn, but we are giving him shit.
You know what? He'll grow up. That's why, like, I do love Ruhn, but he's never been, like, my fuck, marry, kill, marry, Yeah.
Maybe book 3 will change that.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I really hope future us, or people who were listening to this after book 3, are like...
Give us some grace.
Yes, please. Yes, please give us grace.
We're talking within the context of this book.
Yeah. Until we read the 3rd book, and then we'll talk out the context.
Yeah, right, exactly. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk. So Jac already kind of brought up this quote, but I'm going to read it anyway because I want to talk about it in the context of how Ruhn sees Bryce. Quote, "That icy look, their father's look, passed over her face. There was a wild, wicked storm raging beneath that cold exterior, and the power and thrill for both father and daughter lay not in sheer force, but in the control over the self, over those impulses. The outside world saw his sister as reckless, unchecked, but he knew she'd been master of her fate since before he'd met her." And I find this curious because we've talked about Ruhn potentially resenting Bryce. We've talked about Ruhn wanting connection with Bryce. To me, this shows a level of respect that maybe we haven't seen Ruhn demonstrate to Bryce yet, that maybe Bryce herself hasn't seen yet, as well as implying at the same time that Ruhn does not feel like he is the master of his fate.
Yeah.
I think that's what's being said in the subtext that was really important to me and might be why he does have so much respect for Bryce, because she is capable of doing the things that he maybe wants for himself but can't do.
Yeah, and again, Bryce in many ways represents his father because his father has that same, can-do attitude, and
it's one way to describe it.
But I'm gonna get some future psychoanalyzing here, but it also could make sense why he does push away Bryce, because she's like his father, and that's just too much approval from someone that a lot of issues.
Yeah. I want to take a beat to share a fun little quote that is Ruhn seeing Bryce and Hunt interact, because I think it's the most honest you can get between Bryce and Hunt.
Yeah.
So let me just read this. Quote, "The Umbra Mortis looked pissed, his arms crossed and wings flaring slightly, but Bryce just breezed past him, causing Athalar to slowly turn, arms slackening, as if such a thing had never happened in his long, miserable life." And at this point in the book, we only have subjective tellings of their encounters, either from Bryce's point of view or Hunt's point of view. So it is fun to see it from Ruhn's point of view that like, oh, like, yeah, they're having power dynamics, but like maybe Hunt's just thrown off because Bryce is unpredictable.
Yeah.
And doesn't do what he expects of her.
Yep.
And not in a bad way of just like, oh, she doesn't treat me like a piece of shit. Oh, okay. Oh, she's not terrified of me. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just funny. I mean, I'm also like in my mind where it's like Ruhn is like, oh, she's treating him like crap too. Cool.
That's comforting.
One time I said something, I was like telling a story to my mom and my stepdad was there and I was like, I turned to him like, see, you're not the only one I give shit to. I treat everyone like this.
Don't think you're special.
Yeah, no. It's universal shit.
And for the third time in this episode, someone calls Ruhn by his title rather than by his name, just like the Autumn King. And I think that that's aggravating in its own right to Ruhn. It implies that Ruhn's not his own person, and I think that is part of the reason why Ruhn reacts so violently to Hunt.
Oh yeah, like, you know, when he asks Hunt, like, hey, did you catch that demon thing? And like, well, what kind of demon did you figure out what kind of demon it is? And Hunt says something that eats little princes for breakfast. Like, that's hilarious.
It's so funny. This is why Bryce and Hunt are meant to be together.
Yeah.
Because they've got the same sense of humor.
I never appreciated how funny Hunt was.
Hunt is hilarious.
Until like this analysis where I was like, oh, this is pretty great. And, you know, again, coming back to this like super accurate description where you have, the start of this episode where Hunt's like, I hate Bryce. I hate her. I'm going to kill her. I don't want to do this anymore. And then the second Ruhn's like, stop looking after her. Hunt's like, this is my job, baby.
I just do what I'm told.
I'm just, this is my job, so you can go fuck off. Like, suddenly he wants to be there with her.
Yeah. Such male posturing.
Right.
They're peacocking is what they are.
They might as well be pulling out their penises and just start measuring and then let me be there.
Oh my gosh.
I'll be the official scorekeeper.
So there's a moment where Ruhn is really, really pleased with himself because he knows that Bryce is going after the Viper Queen and Hunt doesn't. And, knowledge is power. And to me, this moment came across as SJM trying to push the love triangle.
Yeah. Like, if we ever met her, she'd be like, I was never pushing this love triangle.
No.
But I agree where it's like, I feel special because she told me.
Right. She came to me for advice.
Yeah, even though that's not what happened at all. But yes, like, it is 100%.
It's love triangle coded. Whether or not SJM meant it, it has the beats of a love triangle.
Watch, we find out in the third book they're not related at all, and they actually are mates, and you and I are like, finally! Success!
I mean, I guess Ruhn could not be related to the Autumn King.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Easy. So, then talking about funny moments again, have to quote just for the sake of quoting. Bryce would speed up. Hunt would match her pace. She'd drop back. He'd do the same. She edged him to the right, off the curb and into oncoming traffic. He narrowly avoided a swerving car and stepped back onto the sidewalk. It's just funny that she just keeps edging him to the side. And then the next chapter immediately starts with, well, Bryce had just successfully managed to get him off to...
Yeah, I love this style.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that in the exposition at one point, I think it reads like, Lahaba sat her ass on the candle. And it's not anyone saying it, it's the exposition. I'm like, that is fun. And that's what makes modern settings fun.
And it's a modern fantasy setting, which is like, you just don't get a lot of these super fantasy, super modern vibes. And I am enjoying this book so much more in the analysis.
I am too.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up and go to Breadcrumbs, we do have to talk about Chapter 17, and we don't have a lot to say. Or at least I don't think we do. We'll see what happens. Hunt is trying to get information out of Bryce, and Bryce, revealing her hand, and in an effort to make Hunt feel stupid, does almost a reverse interrogation. It's not really an interrogation, obviously, because Bryce has the information and Hunt does not. But she asks all these rhetorical questions that she already knows the answers to.
Yep.
And therefore Hunt is powerless. And I feel like it's retribution for the interrogation Bryce was under at the beginning of the book. I don't think it's intentional, but it feels like poetic justice to me.
It does feel like poetic justice. And like just the fact that it's pointing out, hey, did you have critical thinking skills today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you wake up and use that big brain of yours to maybe think big thoughts?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like, because her questions are all very clear and simple.
Yep.
And Hunt's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Like, you're right.
It just puts him in his place so fast.
Yeah. Whereas like, oh, here's some simple things.
Yep.
And this is when Hunt starts to see Bryce is clever, but he won't admit it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not going to say anything. And rather than feeling bad or thinking, okay, she's right, he just gets mad about it. Like, he gets even more pissy.
Like a petulant child.
Like a petulant child. Bryce points out, after Hunt asks Bryce, like, hey, when were you going to tell me about the list? She says, quote, after you spent a whole day assuming I was a dumb, vapid female more interested in getting my nails done than solving this case. And then a little bit later, she says, I was going to tell you everything when I finished up at the nail salon this morning, but then you bit my head off. Yeah.
There are consequences to your actions. I'm sorry.
Exactly. And like, she's not, because you're being a dick, it's not going to stop her
Right.
from continuing to solve this case.
Right. You're not slowing her down. You're just slowing down your entitlement to the information of what's going on.
Exactly. Like, this is you hurting yourself.
Right.
And, you know, what's his response? Quote, whatever, Quinlan, don't do it again. You tell me before you make a move. No remorse. There's no, like, oh, maybe I messed up. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Because his fragile ego has been damaged.
No, yeah, like, you didn't use your big boy thinking brain.
Yeah. And again, don't get us wrong. We do actually like Hunt.
Yeah, I love Hunt.
He is just a man stuck in a 200-year-old body acting like a child. He doesn't understand the modern woman. Yeah. He doesn't understand communication. He doesn't understand compromise. And he will learn those things.
Yeah.
It's as if an 18-year-old from the 1800s was brought to our reality. Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't accept a single thing that individual did to me or said to me.
It goes into like what this is like. We know this is a patriarchal society. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have queens involved and stuff, but this is like, you know, a lot of sexist shit is happening. And then you have the whole, he's been around forever. But he was a leader of an army.
At 18.
At 18. He was in charge. People came to him. He never had to ask for shit. And he grew up in a society that was, you know, that favors men. Of course, you're going to have that beat of like, wait a minute, this is scary.
Yeah, I'm gonna correct something you said, just because I know that other people will if I don't, which is he did grow up in a poor household. His mother was a single mother. She worked.
Yes.
He, you know, he was not looked upon favorably among his own kind. However, his kind is at the top of the food chain. Yeah. So even at the bottom of his kind, he's still further up than a lot of other people.
Yes. And so like when I say like things were handed to him, it's like when he was in charge and a general and, you know, like he had his big scary powers. And then people, even though people judged him and stuff, but if he was like, hey, I need this, no one's going to question. They're going to just give them something. And he's, you know, but that's just our Hunt. And I'm going to make my note, you know, like as we wind down this section, I'm going to say like why I don't think Hunt is sexist or a misogynist, you know, like we, you know, this is not who he is. We are just griping on these moments because one, it's our podcast. We do a literary analysis. This is what we're analyzing.
But if you have different views on why Hunt is acting the way he is, send us an email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us what you think.
Absolutely. So Bryce tells Hunt to not be a stickler for the rules. And he says, the rules are there to keep us alive. We follow them.
Which is so funny for someone who
so not Hunt.
Yeah.
That's so not Hunt. And I just want to like point out like that quote where it's like, this is not his norm.
Yeah.
This is not who he is. This is like, he was a leader of an army reporting to a woman.
Who rebelled against the angels.
Yeah, you know, like, you know, I don't believe this is who he is at his core. He's just doesn't know what to do with his man emotions.
And he's trying to become free.
Yeah.
Like, he is going to do what he thinks he needs to do in order to complete the deal with Micah so that his death count is reduced.
And that's understandable.
Right. So his motivations cloud his ability to critically think and act appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into some breadcrumbs, but non-multiverse spoiler crumbs.
In chapter 14, regarding Ruhn's power level, quote, on the one hand, had he surpassed his father, the Autumn King, the playing field would have tipped in his favor. On the other, it would have established him firmly as a rival. Well, it's a good thing that Bryce ends up on that slightly above side. I wonder if that means there will be a showdown between her and the Autumn King in book 3. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. In chapter 14, quote, Ruhn was one of about a dozen Fae princes across the whole planet Midgard, but he stood apart as the only starborn among them, among all the Fae. Not for long, bitch!
Quote, Ruhn had visited Bryce frequently at her parents' place over the next 3 years after Bryce met the Oracle. She'd been a bright spot, the brightest spot. Bright like a star, perhaps?
Yeah. When Ruhn thinks he doesn't have to be a domineering prick like his father because he's inherited his mother's familial magic, quote, even if most of his mother's kin in Avalon were little better, his cousins especially.
It's referencing Cormac.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who we see in Sky and Breath.
I do like Cormac.
Last one in chapter 14. The Autumn King says to Ruhn, quote, the first starborn prince could blind an enemy with a flash of his starlight. You can barely summon a sparkle for an instant. It's a big clue how Bryce's magic will act.
Yeah. Going into chapter 15, quote, someone was always watching. In this entire fucking city, territory, and world, someone was always watching. The cameras so bespelled and warded, they were bomb-proof. Even if the city turned to rubble under the lethal magic of the Asterian Guard's brimstone missiles, the cameras would keep recording. So convenient, since that's what happens at the very end.
Yeah, exactly. Like
thank you for summarizing
out.
Right? Thank you for summarizing that for us.
Still in chapter 15, Bryce, quote, examined her nails, now painted in some sort of color gradient that went from pink to periwinkle tips, like the sky at twilight, because she's a star and everything has to be night related.
Lahaba to Bryce, quote, one day... Well, why did I give it that voice?
Because that's her voice in the audible version.
One day, the boss will trade my services to some lecherous old creep, and you'll regret ever denying me anything. I mean, not quite, but the regret is quite true.
The regret is definitely true. Last one in chapter 15, quote, Lahaba never named anything in the biggest tank. Mercifully, the tank was currently empty. Not for long. Like, they're constantly cursing themselves left and right.
Yeah. In chapter 16, quote, Ruhn's head spun as he narrowed his eyes at Bryce. Blinking at the halo, starlight danced around her head and feet. The star sword glimmered with starlight too. He could have sworn the damn thing was singing. All right, like, I hear it, like, find SJM, she's starborn. It's great.
Was so shocked at how many references there were that totally flew over my head.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
In chapter 16, when Ruhn asks Bryce what she knows about Luna's horn, Bryce is cagey. Quote, he eyed the small gold amulet around his sister's neck. At least Jessica gave her that much protection. The horn and the amulet always get mentioned close together. This is probably the 5th, 6th time this has happened. Mm-hmm. Ruhn even repeats what Danika used to say. Don't take that off.
Last in chapter 16, Ruhn thinks, quote, could it really be coincidence that the murders were starting again at the same time his father had given the order to find an object that had gone missing a week before Danika's death? And that is all his big boy brain will think about. Like, no, it's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. In chapter 17, Hunt says to Bryce, whatever, Quinlan, don't do it again. You tell me before you make a move. Bryce says, I'm getting real bored with you giving me orders and forbidding me to do things. I included this because it doesn't stop being a pain point. Like, it's a big pain point in Sky and Breath. So they don't grow up in that regard.
Now let's get into multiverse thoughts and breadcrumbs. Again, because the third book hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
The orrery in the far back of the space drew Ruhn's eye, a working model of their 7 planets, moons, and sun, made from solid gold. The mystic in Sky and Breath has an orrery, so does Rhys in Silver Flames, Is Prythian a planet of the same system?
Like they all have orreries.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. And I think there's also an orrery in the gallery of the Antiquities Library.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, the giant gold chandelier that hung down in the center of the space, the gallery library, was fashioned after an exploding sun with all the other dangling lights in perfect alignment of the 7 planets. I just feel like it's all connected.
Yeah.
Still in chapter 14, the bulk of Ruhn's powers come from his mom's side. Quote, the Fae who ruled Avalon, the mist-shrouded isle in the north, the sacred heart of Faedom. Sounds like the island where the prison is in Prythian. Maybe all the inhabitants of the original Dusk Court are now in Avalon.
Yeah, I mean...
There's so much we don't know.
The Rhys side comes from his mom's side.
Yeah.
Because that's where he gets his shadow magic from. Also in chapter 14, the Autumn King tells Ruhn he is studying how light moves through the world, how it can be shaped. So we're putting this here because... Like, of course, like, you know, like, does it have to do with the 3rd book? But it somehow feels like it's not a tidbit to be forgotten. Like, it could be multiverse related.
Yeah. I don't know. But why is he doing it? And why does SJM let us know what he's doing?
Well, I have something later that I think.
Oh, okay. Last one in chapter 14. Quote, you may find that like calls to like. Merely researching Luna's horn could reveal things to you that were hidden from others. AKA like Bryce's starborn status. Also, we all know that like calls to like sounds familiar. I wonder if the same can be said of why and how Bryce finds the inner circle in Prythian, because like calls to like. AKA her sword, truth teller, etc., etc. I also just want to note that the Autumn King is nearly 500 years old like Rhys. It's curious.
It's creepy when we put it like that. So going into chapter 16, I have a couple of thoughts here. Quote, the mirth wrapped soft, sweet arms around his mind and dragged him into its shimmering pool. I don't remember which season, I don't remember which book, but I know I pointed out there was a very similar quote in ACOTAR series where I was like, this is both motherly and suffocating. There was like this idea of like a mother drowning or killing their child.
Yeah.
And the reason why I wanted to like kind of, there was a juxtaposition there because it then he goes on this journey, quote, his body sinking into the mattress until he was falling through shadows and starlight. The strings of the song hovered overhead, golden threads that glittered with sound. So we know in book 2 that his mind can travel. Your face is like, you good?
You keep talking.
Okay. So we know like in book 2 that he like his mind travels. I think he's traveling to Prythian, and which is kind of like what his maybe that's what his dad like can, bend light and time. I think maybe that he's like kind of half in Prythian in his mind, and then he immediately looks and sees Bryce, and we see that there's a halo of starlight that danced around her head. Now that could just be purely Starborn stuff.
Yeah.
But, it could also have a little bit to do with like, Prythian, but I think he's descending into Prythian.
So I have a different thought, and I didn't write it down because I was like, this might be too much of a leap. But then you mentioned that in book 2, his mind can travel.
Okay.
So this is also book 2 related. I don't know if it's confirmed, but I believe Ruhn and Lydia are mates. And golden threads are often associated with mates.
Yeah.
And so what if he's already descending into the bridge that connects them?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I like it. I like both ways.
Still in chapter 16. So we know from the end of Sky and Breath that Ruhn looks like Rhys. I argue that Declan is the modern version of Az. He uses technology to hack into government systems, so basically he's a spy. Does that mean Tristan is supposed to be like Cassian, even though Hunt is like Cassian?
Maybe.
And then there's also this quote associated with the 3 men. Quote, going through their ordeals together had only cemented the bond, just like the Bat Boys and their blood right on, I forget what the mountain is called. But these 3 mirror Rhys, Cassian, and Az.
Also in chapter 16, the ordeal itself varied depending on the person. For others, it might be slaying a worm or demon. The greater the Fae, the greater the ordeal. I wonder what other worm there might be in the SJM verse. Feyre.
Now, she had to slay a worm when she was still human. But I think there was still Fae blood in her.
Agreed. I mean, why would Rhys have a human mate? A completely human mate.
Yep.
Same with Cassian.
Yep. And so I think the worm in ACOTAR was Feyre's ordeal.
Yep, agreed.
Last but not least, in chapter 17, I have a different Avalon theory based on this quote. Quote, no kingdom was truly their own, even Avalon. The Green Isle, ruled by the Stag King, still bowed to the Republic. You know where else there was a Stag King?
Yep.
King Brennan in Throne of Glass.
Fuck. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
I am very excited for the book.
I am too. What's your Bryce-ism this week, Jac? I have one.
Oh, you have one?
I did, and then I think I forgot it. But you go first.
I think my Bryce-ism is call it what it is and have power in that. The way that Bryce calls everyone by their name and has power over them because of it.
Yeah.
That's my Bryce-ism.
Yeah. My Bryce-ism is look them in the eye when you're naked.
All right, everyone, you have your assignments. Let us know how it goes. I really do want people to write back and be like, hey, I followed your Bryce-ism. Here's how it went. Amy.
Yes.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Who possesses the illusion of control and who is the master of it?
So there's a lot of illusion of control here.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the Autumn King, he has the illusion of control, but he's really pissed off that Ruhn is Starborn and the Autumn King himself is not.
Yeah.
I think Bryce is the only one in control.
I agree.
All these men.
Yeah.
Like, for a while, I was going to be like, yeah, both the Autumn King and Bryce. But actually, you know what? Bryce is the only one in control. Because she's the only one willing to be honest with herself.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, maybe Bryce hasn't dealt with or whatever it is. But, like, she is honest with herself and knows when she has issues, knows when it's screwed up. And she's not afraid of her worst parts.
Yeah.
Because she went out, had the most reckless night of her life. Her friends all died. Then the family of those friends shunned her. The friends that she did have basically abandoned her. Mm-hmm. And she had to face the worst of herself.
Yeah.
Because because even from all that, she chose not to descend into party girl, you know?
Yeah.
She could have chosen a very different path.
Oh, yeah. A very self-destructive path.
Yeah.
And she didn't.
I mean, is she thriving? Maybe not, but she's surviving for sure. And she's not self-destructive. Surviving, not thriving. Yep. Please go back to our season 1 of ACOTAR.
I agree. I think what it is that Bryce has nothing to prove.
Mm-hmm.
She has no one to satisfy because she's not capable of satisfying anyone, and she knows that. Like, she's never going to satisfy her father.
Yep.
She's never going to satisfy Sabine. And so she lives almost unapologetically and pursues everything unapologetically. Whereas Ruhn is still beholden to the Autumn King.
Mm-hmm.
The Autumn King is beholden to whatever power he thinks he needs to have.
Hunt is beholden to Micah.
Right? No one is as true to themselves as Bryce is.
Bryce is beholden to her grief, but she recognizes it.
And she's able to get over it.
Yes. And she's able to kind of like work through that, cope through that. But yeah, will we still see that control later? Who knows? But
for this moment,
she's doing a lot better.
And I think, you know what? It is also, she's able to read everybody else in a way they are not able to read her. Because she's using that illusion of, I'm the party girl, I'm vapid, I don't know anything.
And she doesn't let it insult her.
Right.
That's the other thing where, you know, the definition of sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. How, after Danika and all of them died, Connor's brother, Ethan, sending those horrible, horrible text messages, like, what? And you calling her dumb and vapid? You think that's going to hurt her feelings?
Right. She's the worst has already happened to her.
Yeah. The worst things to be said have been said. The worst that she's thought about herself has already been thought. And she's like picked herself up to a certain degree, you know, not going to say that she's like, you know, dusted herself off or anything, but she's the only one who's like, okay, well, here's the illusion that everyone has of me. I'm not going to correct you, but I'm not going to prove your point.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. She doesn't pretend to be this party girl.
Right.
She's just not going to bother to correct you.
Right. Exactly. Which is the most powerful.
Which is kind of like the whole thing of the like the illusion part, right?
Right.
She's not pretending, she's eluding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 18 through 24 of House of Earth and Blood.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle BookTalkForBookTalk. Bye. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.